Hello, this is Emily Toops with the League of Women Voters of Portland. You're watching the Video Voters Guide. Today we're in the studios of MetroEast Community Media to talk with candidates running in the May 2018 primary election. With me today is Barbara Smith Warner, running for State Representative of the 45th District. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for this office.
Sure. So right now I am the representative for House District 45, which is Northeast Portland, Maywood Park, and Park Rose. And I have been in that position for about 4 years. I decided to run for the legislature really as a function of my kids going to public schools. I always say that I've always believed in public schools in the abstract, but when my kids started, it really made it concrete and made me realize that even in our very engaged neighborhood with our pretty well-resourced public school, things are not the same as they were when I was in school. And I got involved in the PTA, did a lot of volunteer work, and realized this is something that the state needs to focus on. We need to pay more attention to what's going on today in our schools. So I decided to, I got appointed to the legislature and then have run twice, and have over that time have really gotten to focus on not only education but the underpinnings of that, which is our need in this state for a more stable, fair revenue system.
Great. And so with education, sort of what steps are you taking to ensure that Oregonians are qualified and hired for Oregon jobs sort of post-education?
That's a great question. There's not a one size fits all answer for that, or really anything in education. The most striking thing, the more I've kind of dived in and learned about education, gone from just being a parent to drawing back the curtain a little bit and seeing how the structure works, is that Oregon has a couple unusual things about it. Most of our funding for schools comes from the state rather than local property taxes, and the state gives kind of a consistent amount of money all across the state, and then does not have that much to say about how that gets spent. So you really have a range. We have 197 districts in this state. And they range from districts where there's lots of career and technical education, lots of kind of hands-on experience, to some where, because those things have always been very expensive, some where there's less. So overall, the most important thing I think we can do in education to help create kids who are ready to work, it's a combination of focusing on getting them good overall education. How about coding as part of the language requirements in school, because that's going to go a long way towards creating kids who have good employable work skills, and really bringing back that focus to career and technical education, what I remember as shop when I was growing up, whether it's woodworking or industrial arts, to now it's things like teaching kids geometry through welding. It's the idea of using hands-on opportunities to both teach kids skills and to also teach them things like reading and math and science through those hands-on opportunities. That's how you really engage kids who you might otherwise lose, and how you help create a whole bunch of folks who are ready for the jobs of the future.
Wonderful. And, you mentioned a lot of these programs, and programs require funding, but Oregon has traditionally had a budget shortfall. So what will you do to address that?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the other thing that really has come to dominate what I've been working on in the legislature is our revenue structure. We have a system that is pretty unstable. We are very dependent on income taxes because we don't have a sales tax and we have limits on our property taxes. So we're a very income tax dependent state. And the issue with that is that means that when times are good, times are great and our revenues take off, and when times are bad, times are terrible and our revenues plummet. So that has reflected itself all across the budget in the state of Oregon. Most things that you hear about as issues are a function of the fact that we have this very unstable revenue system, and I would argue one that is not terribly fair, that not everyone is paying their fair share. Our business tax structure is based on a corporate tax structure, which is based on the federal tax structure, which becomes more and more complicated and tracks less and less with the economy. Even during economic times, our corporate tax revenue is flat. It does not track with the economy. So I have been working on the issue of the revenue structure, and just two quick things. Number one, I'm on the revenue committee, and we worked long through the 2017 legislative session, a little in the 18, and we will continue to work going forward about how do we establish a way to fund the needs that we all have and agree on, to have solid, consistent funding for education, for public health, for senior services, whatever it is. We need to establish a consistent funding stream for those folks that indeed is not only consistent and stable, but fair, so that everybody's paying their fair share. And to link it in with education, I am right now I'm actually the House chair of a committee called the Joint Committee on Student Success, where we are spending the rest of this year traveling around the state to 10 or 12 locations and going and listening and talking to parents and students and teachers and saying, what is working in your school system? What do you think we could be doing better? What can the state do to support it? And the idea being that we will come up with an overall package of both kind of big picture things that the state can do to support education and hopefully some dedicated funding sources for that. And hopefully, if that works out, that will go a long way towards stabilizing our revenue as well.
Great. And so switching gears a little bit, what do you recommend to make Oregon's infrastructure and population more resilient to environmental factors such as seismic activity, floods, and wildfire disasters?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is I believe we need to deal with climate disruption. I supported the Clean Energy Jobs Bill that was worked on in 2017 and 2018, and there's a joint committee working on that going forward as well. And dealing with and acknowledging climate disruption and the impact it's having on those things, on the increasing number and severity of forest fires, on floods and droughts lasting longer and in different parts of the state and the world. I believe that that's the number one issue, is to acknowledge that and to work on what we can do in the state to price carbon and to set up a structure where we can move ourselves away from some of those particularly climate disruptive items. In addition, we passed a transportation package last year that, as part of it, will be providing significant seismic upgrades to a lot of our roads, bridges, and other transportation infrastructure around the state. So I think that'll help. And lastly, the governor appointed a resiliency officer who's trying to coordinate. The thing about issues like that is there's so many people working on them in so many different places that what's key about what the governor's done with the resiliency officer is it's one person who's kind of looking across all of the agencies that might be working on that. Maybe whether it's the forestry department about the fires, transportation, about the infrastructure. The idea of having one person who's looking across that and figuring out how can we be aware of those needs for resiliency going forward and across all of these different areas where we're working on it.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara, for giving us your viewpoints on these various topics.
My pleasure.
This has been the Videos Voter Guide. Thank you for watching. The primary is May 15th, 2018. Please ensure that you're informed about all of the candidates and the ballot measures and exercise your vote. Thanks again.